20-13, the Commodores moved to 4-2 with another massive SEC win over Kentucky. Welcome back into the studio. I'm your host, Zach Phillip, joined by Mr. Transitive Property himself, Jonah Barbin. We are here to recap the Kentucky game, look forward to the Ball State game, and we also had a special interview, a special guest on the show. Let's start by recapping the game. Let's talk defense. Jonah, what was your rundown on the defense?
Yeah, first of all, great win. Again, there were a lot of moments where it seemed like it might be that dreaded same old Vandy, but it wasn't. Look, we said the battle going into Kentucky was going to be interesting. It was going to be like looking yourself in the mirror. They're a team that maybe stakes themselves a little bit more on their defensive identity than the Commodores, but offensively, run heavy, option heavy, and trying to win the clock and win time of possession, which is what Vanderbilt dominated against Alabama. Their defense did a really good job, generated some turnovers, had guys banged up, right? Patterson questionable all week, didn't end up playing. There was that horrible, horrible moment where Miles Capers went down, had to be carted off the field. We were really concerned for him. Luckily, by the fourth quarter, he was on the sideline in street clothes. He had been checked out of the Kentucky hospital, so he is all good there. But guys stepped up, right? Nick Rinaldi came in, made a big impact. Trudell Berry stepped up, made an impact, right? And a lot of what we talked about this defense coming into the season, and the reason there was optimism, certainly not this much optimism around the team, is because of that depth. Those young players that are on the team, some of those older veterans, some of that depth came out to play on offense. You'll talk about that in just a minute. But the defense was resilient, able to generate a couple of big turnovers, incredible one-handed interception by DePicky Wright. DeRicky made a big play there. You never heard that one before? DePicky, of course. So overall, really impressed with the defense to hold Kentucky to 13 points. Obviously, offense is not their forte. Defense is, and the offense was able to fare well. But the defense did their job yet again, certainly played well enough for these guys to win. Kobe Taylor needs to tighten it up just a little bit there at the corner position. But I'm very pleased overall. Another encouraging and impressive SEC win for the Commodores.
Yeah, I mean, it was, once again, all three phases, very complete SEC win, just like we saw against Alabama. And what I want to focus on is the game that Tim Beck called. He is using the 53.5 yards wide field absolutely beautifully, keeping Pavia in a rhythm. Pavia was 11 for 11 on short passes. That's passes less than 10 yards. He threw for 15 of 18. One of those, of course, was his first interception of the year, unfortunately. I mean, it was a great play call and a pretty good pass. The linebacker, yeah, the linebacker unfortunately stepped back and made a really, really good, I think it was a one-handed tip catch. But another great game from Pavia, ultra efficient. The offensive line working wonders. I want to shout out Xavier Castillo. Vandy fans have given that dude a hard time, but he played another good game. PFF had him ranked the highest run blocker, and to that end, the tight ends have just done an unbelievable job blocking. Over half of our runs this weekend were around the ends, so either the tackles or the tight ends doing a nice job run blocking. And then with the receivers, not a huge game by anybody, but Richie Hoskins did emerge as the primary target in this game, catching a huge touchdown. Once again, a great game from A.J. Newberry and Alexander. Just a clean game, won the time of possession, which is so huge. And we were playing a team that prides himself in time of possession. That's what Kentucky does, and we still won it 35-25, as Tim Beck and Jerry Kill's offenses do. It was another great outing. We spoke a little bit about this outing and really all things Vandy football with an alumni of Vanderbilt. Welcome, John, into the cast. Jonah and I are lucky to be joined by a friend of the show, a weekly watcher. John, welcome into the studio here. We got a couple questions for you today. Let's just start off with, why did you choose Vanderbilt when you were picking colleges? You were in the class of 87, so in 1982-83, why did you pick Vanderbilt?
Well, I came from New York, and at that time, there were not a lot of New Yorkers at Vanderbilt. I was actually planning on going to an Ivy League school, and late in the game, I applied on the common application and got into Vanderbilt and said, okay, I'll go take a visit down there. And it happened to coincide with the spring fling, and came down on campus after visiting a cold, frozen tundra up in the Northeast, and it was about 55 degrees. SEC sports, SEC girls. It was pretty much a no-brainer after that, and just told my parents. They were a little bit surprised, but they went with it, and the rest is history on there.
Well, John, you certainly made a great decision there. And then part of that aspect, obviously, and I think a big part of why I came, probably Zach as well, is those aforementioned sports. Can you talk about the most memorable game or games from your years at Vanderbilt?
Sure, there were actually a few on the football side, particularly. There were some on the basketball, some on the baseball. But Bo Jackson was there at the same time. But in football in particular, it was two games that stand out to me. One from my time there, I happened to be lucky enough to be at Alabama when we beat Alabama 40 years ago, prior to this one. And, honestly didn't think I was ever going to see another Vanderbilt win, but it was a great one to see. It was a great one then. What I remember most about that, I believe it was their homecoming. And not a lot of Vandy fans there. We were pretty shocked. They were incredibly shocked and not too pleased with us after the game when we were all excited running around there. But it was a great experience to win on the road at someone's homecoming, being such a home underdog. We also, same thing what happened in Georgia with Kirby Smart in his first year there. I think it was 16 when we went. And again, there were maybe in a sea of black and red, there were about 250, fans of Vanderbilt there in the entire stadium. So we have stuff to aspire to as Vandy fans now after seeing the last couple of games. But and we're there, and again, it's the shock of winning. The idea that we could actually pull it off. We've seen so many times what we used to call same old Vandy, where we get there, we just couldn't win, and we didn't know how to win. And to see those two games in particular in hostile environments and being a fan was just super exciting to celebrate.
Well, we're seeing history repeats itself there. We obviously took down Alabama, and Georgia's lucky they're not on our schedule this year. You've obviously been a loyal fan. Talk to us about the years of James Franklin at Vanderbilt, and maybe compare this current team, this 2024 Clark Lee team, to the really impressive teams of James Franklin.
Sure. And it was a long time. Again, we've been long suffering. Many of the alum, similar in my class, really diehard fans, which is a testament to Vanderbilt. There may not be a ton of them, but the fans who they do have are incredibly loyal. I'm looking at two of them who are going to be future alumni in the same position, hopefully not as frustrated as we've been. But we had so many years of just nothing that when Franklin came along, he really inspired the team, and it was a whole confidence thing that both he and Pavia share. They brought a level of toughness and the ability to say, you know what, we can win. I think this time versus Franklin, I think Franklin was a little bit more smoke and mirrors than what we were seeing today, for the reason that Franklin was a guy there at the right time, the right place at the right time. I think it was obviously a stepping stone for him. We all knew that. There were some problems with his recruiting. They let the standards down a little bit, and we got some better athletes. There was some trouble on campus, but he really changed the mojo. But it was at a time, honestly, and that's when we saw the remnants of it, beating Kirby Smart a few years later. We saw it when the SEC East was down, and the SEC was not nearly top to bottom as strong as it's been today. Florida was down, Georgia was down, Kentucky wasn't what it was. When you look at what we're doing today, it's, to me, is really incredible. The last two games, at least, the ability to learn how to win and believe in yourselves. And one guy is, responsible for the bulk of that. Clark Lee's been great, but without Pavia, we saw what he was, and it wasn't. But to his testament, he's gone out and he's changed things for years. I know my myself and the loyal friends would be sitting in front of the TV saying, under Mason and even under Lee early on, we can't line up directly with Alabama and Georgia and Ole Miss and Auburn and try to play smash mouth football. We're supposed to be smart. We're supposed to be creative as students and as a university. Yet on our football team, we sat there with inferior talent and tried to, line up with guys and play smash mouth football. And it worked occasionally, but never against the big guys in the SEC. And it wasn't a recipe for success. And, bringing a guy like Pavi in, bringing this new offense, which we've been dying for and desperate for years, and seeing it click is really amazing. And I'll add to that, I look at our offensive line and our defensive line. I've never seen guys so big on the offensive line as we've had. And I'm shocked that our defensive line and our rotation, they're not getting pushed around. So they're players, they're big. And that's, a testament to what Clark Lee's doing there. He's bringing in better talent. And I think, where initially I thought the NIL was going to be a big problem for us, there are opportunities there if we're spending money. And, lo and behold, we're seeing some of the fruits of that labor. I sure wish we wouldn't have lost to Georgia State. But otherwise, everything else is looking pretty solid. And it's nice to see us be competitive and really not go into a game saying, I'm going to watch the first 10 minutes and then go do something else.
Yeah, it's true. The culture has really changed here. Big part of it is Diego Pavia. But as you said, a big part of it is this program in general that Barton Simmons and Clark Lee are building, Tim Beck and Jerry Kill. And I think a question that a lot of Commodore fans have is what's going to happen next year without Diego Pavia, right? But think about how many recruits were at that Alabama game. Think about what they already did with NIL, with a program that won 2 games last year. I think the future is extremely, extremely bright.
All right, so I know you're an optimist. We just got that out of the way that you don't think we're running the table. I mean, we'll see where we go from here, but right now in the AP poll, we're at 26. Do you think that's an appropriate ranking for this Vanderbilt team, and where do you see us ending up by the end of the season in the AP poll?
Look, I think we played Missouri tough. We played Alabama. We beat them, and we beat Kentucky. All 3 of those are quality wins. I mean, if you look at the silliness, Missouri we didn't win, but if we had won that game and we didn't have that blip in Georgia State, and I'm not saying that if we didn't have Georgia State, I'm not sure we would have won these 2 games. So maybe that brings the team together. But let's just say hypothetically, look at our strength of schedule. We beat 3 teams, the number 1 and 2 top 7 teams when we played them, that I think we would be a top 10 team. If we would have, again, discounting the Georgia State, I think 15. So, look, I think that we are easily right now, the way we're playing, with the confidence. And, the other thing that is pretty uncharacteristic for us, which shows you how good our offensive line is. And I think from the NIL standpoint, their commitment to the offensive line and the defensive line, their focus on that plus the quarterback makes all the difference in the world. Those lines make a good quarterback a great one, and if it's a bad line, it makes a good quarterback a bad one. So, from that, it's really something that, they can go places and they can do things, and there's confidence there to execute. They're not making stupid penalties. There's a few personal fouls that I'd like to see, Colby Taylor get a little bit more control of himself.
Wouldn't we all?
But you don't see the normal holding penalties that have been devastating this team. And I think that's part of the offense that we're running. We're not putting guys in bad positions. We're putting the defenses off balance, so we're getting leverage rather than, having to try to hold a guy who weighs 30 pounds more than us, runs faster than us, and is way stronger than us. So I think, it's a real testament. I will give Clark Lee a ton of credit for bringing in the offensive coaching talent that he brought in and willing to kind of hand it over and do something different.
All right, John. Last but not least, before we let you go, was the Bryce Cowan interception in the first half that got overturned, was it an interception?
100%. It was a clean interception with his arm under the ball, and I don't understand any way, shape, or how other than that it's Vanderbilt, and there's always will complain that there's a bias, a referee bias against Vandy, but there's no way that should have been overturned. It was inconclusive at best, and if anything, you can see the ball with his arm under the ball almost the entire time. So I'm not sure how they made that call. But we've seen a lot of crazy things at our time in Vanderbilt. And honestly, to win a game when the calls aren't going our way, again, is something that we haven't seen often.
You're right. I'm absolutely grateful for that. But for that to be indisputable evidence to turn it over,
Insane.
I don't know about that. And I have the same opinion. Obviously, there was no review of it, but on the horse collar in the second half, that should have been a sack and backed him up to 3rd and 30.
He lifted it up instead of pulling him down by it. It was terrible.
Thought it was very clear.
And that was a big call. And again, to see Vanderbilt survive that, and it's hard as a fan, as long as I've been, to not automatically assume bad things are going to happen. You know, as good as we play, like when we were sitting there I remember the Georgia game in particular in 16, it was a 1-point game. Georgia's driving, and I think it was Zach Cunningham who stopped the guy on 4th down. Everyone in the stadium, including us, thought it was like they're going to run it, 1st down, kick the field goal, Vanderbilt's going to lose by 2. The shock on our face and everybody, it's hard not to be negative as a Vandy fan. And, you know, I will tell you, the Kentucky game was the first time after seeing what they did to Alabama. They didn't get lucky beating Alabama. They whipped Alabama. I mean, it was shocking what they did. They controlled the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball and were there. And seeing that against the Kentucky team, who's got a very good defense, you know, it was the first time you felt like in the second half we were going to win this thing.
Yeah.
And you know, that doom of Vanderbilt, it's going to take a long time for it to wear off because we're going to be a little weary. But it's nice to see it getting chipped away at.
Yeah, well, it's a new generation. No time to ponder on the old Vandy anymore, John. But to all the alum out there, hopefully we'll see you in First Bank Stadium at some point this season. And secondly, if there's any other alum watching, we'd love to have you on the show. Please let us know. But that will do it for us with you today, John. Thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Make sure you guys fill up the stadium as well.
Oh, we'll be there. We'll be rowdy.
Thanks, John.
All right, guys. Take care.
All right.
Well, thank you, John. That was fantastic. Great opportunity to talk with alumni. And like you said at the end of that interview, Zach, we'd love to talk to any alumni in the Vanderbilt community or any other fans of the Commodores. Get your take on the team. You're welcome on the show anytime. Just reach out to us. So now we turn to Ball State. Commodores are 4-2, right? Before, obviously, a big clash next week with Texas, who could be the #1 team, could have a chance to take down 2 number 1s at home. But before any of that happens, the number 26 unofficially, Vanderbilt, will take on Ball State, who is not too good. Vanderbilt opens up a 25.5-point favorite. John, that was fantastic. Great opportunity to talk with alumni. And like you said at the end of that interview, Zach, we'd love to talk to any alumni in the Vanderbilt community or any other fans of the Commodores. Get your take on the team. You're welcome on the show anytime. Just reach out to us. So now we turn to Ball State. Commodores are 4-2, right? Before, obviously, a big clash next week with Texas, who could be the #1 team, could have a chance to take down 2 number 1s at home. But before any of that happens, the number 26 unofficially, Vanderbilt, will take on Ball State, who is not too good. Vanderbilt opens up a 25.5-point favorites. Thoughts on the game?
Well, I just saw the line at 26 points, which is fitting because we are the 26th team in the country somehow. Should have been below 26. But, yeah, I mean, this is a team that we should really dominate. They've got 2 wins on the year. They've played 2 real FBS teams, Miami and JMU. Let up 60 points on both of those, just got absolutely pushed around. And I have all the intentions that Vanderbilt is going to do the same thing. Hopefully we dominate in the trenches. One thing to note about this game is we saw Pavia get banged up, his right knee against Kentucky. We'll see how much he plays. Hopefully, please, Lord, can this team dominate enough in the first half to get Pavia out of the game so he can get rested? We'll maybe see the Nate Johnson show. I think Johnson, with his athleticism, could work wonders against the Ball State defense.
May I quote Clark Lee here?
Please do.
Clark Lee said, Diego Pavia would have to get an amputation to leave the game. And it's true. And it's true. Diego Pavia is going to play. I have no doubt about that in my mind. But you're right. Let's be blunt. Ball State is a bad football team. They're a bad football team. They might not be as bad as Alcorn, because I don't know if anybody is as bad as Alcorn, but Ball State is a bad football team through and through. Vanderbilt should own them. My score prediction is 42-3. They're going to cover.
So at what point do you pull Pavia out of the game then?
You pull them out at 3 touchdowns. Get them
at a 3-touchdown lead, even if it's first quarter?
I think if it's 3 touchdowns in the first quarter, then maybe give them one more drive in the second quarter, try to make it 4 touchdowns. If that's, again, it depends on game script, but I agree, maximum, you want him playing 30 minutes in this game.
Commodore fans might hate this comment, but I think Nate Johnson almost might be better against a team like this where we have such an athletic advantage, an advantage in the trenches. Some of those runs where you see Pavia going around the ends, if that's Nate Johnson, he's gone for a touchdown against Ball State.
Are you calling Nate Johnson saying they give the Commodores a better chance to beat Ball State than Diego Pavia?
Case by case.
You're
And
talking
look,
about the number 5 Heisman candidate in the nation right now.
Especially if we need to kill time and we're up and you just want to run the read option every play, I think he could run the ball all day on these guys.
Look, I think Nate Johnson is great. We were in the place where we thought coming into the season, Nate Johnson, even if Diego Pavia was great, probably after the Virginia Tech game, we thought, okay, Nate Johnson next year will take over this team. Now, probably he won't, because the recruits that are going to want to come here, I think we'll probably get, or Vanderbilt will probably get a 4-star quarterback, right?
Please.
I don't think that's out of the question at all. But with that in mind, I think obviously Diego Pavia gives his team the best chance to win. And I think in terms of rankings, which I know we're going to get to, Vanderbilt needs to win this game convincingly. I'm not saying that if they end up winning by 10, it'll kill their chance to be ranked. But obviously the ranking depends on the guys in front of them. That's why they weren't ranked this week. They should cover that line.
Yeah, rankings truly aren't that important, not necessarily the greatest measure of our team. But yes, I mean, we do need to cover. But if we win this convincingly, right, we're able to pull Pavia out. The Texas game is either going to, that's going to make the decision of if we're in or out. If Texas comes in and we get crushed, no matter where we are in the rankings, we're falling out. If we go and play Texas and beat them, we're obviously moving up. So obviously we all want to be ranked, and this Ball State game likely can push us over that threshold. But the Texas game is going to be the telling one to where we end up for the rest of the season.
Well, that gets us to our X-Post of the day. This is coming from Will Clinard. Rank Vandy, you cowards. I agree, Will. Rank Vandy. Rank them. But here's why they didn't get ranked, right? There was a little game on Saturday. It was called Illinois versus Purdue, a game that most people probably wouldn't watch, right? Just because Purdue is terrible, quite frankly. But they ended up taking Illinois to overtime. They nearly beat them. Illinois came back and won that game. They snuck by. Michigan, who is a rickety version of themselves this year, got the win. So they stay, but they're the two teams who are could drop out of the top 25 next week. So, and they're playing each other, luckily. Luckily, how the schedule works, they're playing each other. So actually, one of them will drop out of the top 25. And who would that open up for? Number 26. The only chance that if Vanderbilt takes care of business, which they will against Ball State, the only chance they have not to be ranked going into Texas is if Nebraska beats Indiana, because Indiana's number 16 right now. They're 5-0, I believe, right? And Nebraska is like the 27th team unofficially in the nation. So that's a far better win than Ball State. And if they're that close to Vanderbilt in the AP, I agree that Nebraska should go in above Vanderbilt. But if they do not win that game, Vanderbilt takes care of business, we will see Texas, hopefully still number 1. If you're a Vanderbilt fan, you're rooting for Georgia to win this game, so Vanderbilt has another lick at a number 1 at home, versus, or Texas to beat Georgia, did I say that? Versus the Vanderbilt Commodores, who will be 22nd in the nation.
Yeah, you just made your call to the camera. I'm going to make mine. College game day. Come to Nashville, Nash Vegas, best city in the world. Please come here, Pat McAfee. Somehow I hope this gets to you. I want to hear you screaming anchor down Saturday morning. With that, it's been 11 years. This fan base is just craving a number next week.
Since game day?
No, sorry, since we were ranked.
Yeah, wow.
I believe.
Crazy.
Since we were last ranked, it's been almost 11 years.
And there was a game day My sophomore year, your freshman year, it wasn't like the crew.
SEC game day.
It was
big difference.
Big
we had Jordan
difference.
Rodgers on campus. That's a little different than Big Pat McAfee.
Vanderbilt legend Jordan Rodgers.
That's true.
Shout out Jordan Rodgers. We should get Jordan Rodgers on the show, by the way.
Right. He was on the call for the Kentucky game. Did a nice job
You're
there.
damn right he was.
All right, I want to make a call to the fans here. We spoke to John, an alum, earlier, and I said the same thing. This is the absolute golden age of Vanderbilt football. We've been complaining about this team, this program. I've been watching Vandy my whole life because my dad went here. All these fans, all we've waited for is a season like this. Please come out to First Bank Stadium. Get rowdy, get loud. I know Ball State isn't a hot name to have in town, but we need this win and to carry the momentum into Texas.
Come. It's cheap. It's cheap. We'll get you out there. Enjoy the game. See the game where the Commodores get ranked. And if there's any way you can be in the building against Texas, being the historic game against Alabama, I mean, you cannot miss that game for the world. I have a couple friends who missed that game, and we all looked at them and said, you are seniors in college. You have free tickets to this game, historic games that you could be telling your grandkids about. Get off the couch, whatever you're doing, and come watch some Commodore football. Let's do it.
Absolutely, and the same goes for this Ball State game. Get to that game. That'll do it on Dores Unlocked, pardon me.
Crazy things going on today.
Yeah, that'll do it. I will see you next week wearing this gold jacket when Vandy goes in and takes down Ball State again. We'll see you at 5-2. See you next week.